I remember the exact moment I decided to give up. It wasn't loud or dramatic, no screaming at the heavens, no breaking my last paintbrush over a trash can fire. It was quiet. Cold. Like someone just flicked a switch and all the lights inside me went dark. I was sitting in the back of a rundown coffee shop in Brooklyn, pretending to sip on a stale cup of drip I'd been nursing for 3 hours. My sketch pad was blank. My bank account was worse. I hadn't sold a painting in 8 months. Not one. That morning, I'd received my 3rd rejection email in as many days from a gallery that, ironically, claimed they were looking for fresh, edgy perspectives. Guess mine wasn't edgy enough. Or fresh enough. Or maybe I just wasn't enough. My apartment lease was ending in 4 days. My landlord had already stopped pretending he didn't hate me. I was about to be out on the street with a stack of canvases and nowhere to put them. I stood up, left the coffee, and walked the city like a ghost. Just another shadow slipping through the cracks between people who still had somewhere to go. That's when I saw him. He was sitting on the edge of the sidewalk, wrapped in 2 jackets that looked older than me. His hair was a tangled nest and his hands were shaking either from the cold or something worse. But what struck me wasn't his face. It was the way he was staring up at a street mural like he could see the whole world inside it. I had one painting left in my messenger bag. Lazarus. A self-portrait. Not literal, just colors, shapes, pain. My face wasn't in it, but I was all over it. I don't know what made me stop. I walked past him, then turned around like something yanked on my spine. You like art? I asked. He looked up, blinking slow. I used to. I pulled the painting out, careful not to scuff it against the concrete. Here, I said. You can have it. He stared like I'd handed him a gold bar made of fire. What? Why? I just don't want it to die with me. He didn't say anything. Just took it with shaking hands. I didn't wait for thanks. I just nodded, turned, and walked away. That night, I slept in a stairwell behind a laundromat, using my coat as a blanket and my regret as a pillow. I had no idea that the painting I gave away, the one I thought no one would ever see again, was already on its way to changing my life. Because 3 days later, it showed up in a gallery window in Soho. And somehow, my signature was still on the back. 3 days after I gave that painting away, I was standing outside the gallery window, heart jackhammering against my ribs like it was trying to break out and escape without me. There it was. My painting. Lazarus. Hung dead center in a crisp white room behind glass walls, lit like it was a relic dug up from some ancient civilization. I stood frozen on the sidewalk, a lump growing in my throat so fast I could barely breathe. My signature, E. Harper, was still scrawled in the bottom right corner, clear as daylight. And underneath, a little placard read. Untitled, artist unknown. Donated anonymously. Donated? What the hell? I pressed closer to the glass like I could melt through it. People milled inside, thin scarves, louder laughs, glasses of wine held like weapons. I looked down at myself, wrinkled hoodie, paint-stained jeans, hair that hadn't met a comb in days. I wasn't just underdressed, I was invisible. But then again, I was used to that. Still, I couldn't just walk away. The woman at the front desk barely looked up when I pushed through the doors. Hi, welcome to Rourke and Vale. Are you here for the showing, or? I pointed past her. That painting. The one in the middle. That's mine. She blinked. Excuse me. It's mine. I painted it. I donated it, kind of. I mean, I gave it away and somehow it ended up here. She raised an eyebrow like she was checking me for crazy. You're the artist? Yes. Eli Harper. Check the back. My name should still be on it. She hesitated, then picked up a phone and made a hushed call. 2 minutes later, a man walked out of the side hallway, a walking linen advertisement with steel gray eyes and shoes worth more than my rent. He introduced himself as Julian Vale. I hear you're claiming authorship of our centerpiece, he said, calm but clipped. That's a bold move. It's not a claim. It's a fact. He studied me for a long beat. Then he said something that froze me in place. Do you have proof? I blinked. Excuse me. Proof, he repeated. Something to verify your identity as the artist. Sketches. Social media posts. A portfolio. Anything? And that's when it hit me. I had nothing. No website. No gallery presence. My phone was dead and buried. My apartment was gone. Everything I had, proof, history, identity, was stuffed into a storage unit I couldn't afford anymore. All I had was my word. And in that world? That wasn't worth much. Vale smiled politely. Come back when you can prove it, he said, then turned and walked away like I was yesterday's trash. I left that place shaking with a cocktail of rage and humiliation. I wasn't even worth a second glance. But that night, something happened that changed the game. I was back in my stairwell when a guy I'd seen a few times around the block came over. Skinny, twitchy, always smelling like motor oil and burnt toast. He had this beat-up messenger bag with him and he dropped it next to me like it was no big deal. Thought you might want this back, he said. I stared at him. What? I was the one who found your painting, he said. Some rich lady saw it propped up next to Martin, you know, the guy you gave it to, and offered him $50 for it. I was nearby. He gave it to me to hold while he went looking for a bathroom. Never came back. My heart dropped. You sold it? Nah, not exactly. I didn't think it was worth much, but a girl I know interns at a gallery. I gave it to her. Told her it might be outsider art or some crap. He grinned, clearly proud of himself. Guess I was right. I wanted to punch him. Instead, I opened the bag. Inside were some of my old sketchbooks. Torn, stained, but mine. Proof. And suddenly, I had what I needed. The next morning, I went back. I didn't knock. I didn't ask. I walked into Rourke and Vale like I had something to lose because now I did. I dropped the sketchbook on the desk with a thud. Page 12, I said to the woman. It's the original concept for Lazarus. Pencil and charcoal. Still got the smudge from my thumbprint. Vale appeared again, less smug this time. He flipped through the pages slowly. And when he hit page 12, he stopped. There it was. The ghost of the painting, raw and bleeding on paper. The same strokes. The same madness. He looked up at me. Different now. Calculating. Mr. Harper, he said. Let's talk. And just like that, I was no longer invisible. But I should have known. In the art world, being seen doesn't always mean being safe. Julian Vale led me into a backroom so white and sterile it felt like stepping into a dream built by someone with OCD and too much money. He didn't say much at first, just offered me coffee in a cup that probably cost more than my whole wardrobe and sat across from me like he was about to negotiate a hostage situation. You understand, he said finally, this puts us in an unusual position. I leaned back in the chair, suddenly very aware of how my hoodie smelled like 2-day-old street. Yeah, I didn't mean to cause a scene. I just wanted credit for my own work. He steepled his fingers. Of course. But let me be frank with you, your painting, as it currently exists within this exhibition, has created momentum. And mystery. The idea that it appeared anonymously? It captivated people. I didn't say anything, but I felt my jaw start to tighten. We've had multiple offers, he went on. 5 figures. Maybe more, depending on how the next week goes. Now, if you come forward too loudly, it changes the narrative. It risks the mystique. There it was. The pitch. You want me to stay invisible, I said flatly. Not invisible, he corrected. Just quiet. For now. We build the story properly, reintroduce you as a lost voice rediscovered, a hidden genius who wandered the margins of society. You'll be in demand. Trust me. I stared at him. So, you want to manufacture my life. I want to sell your work, he said, smiling like a vulture. And that means selling you. But not the real you. The version people want to believe. I felt sick. He was offering me everything I thought I wanted, but not as me. As some fable. A myth. A caricature of tragedy and grit dressed up for the elite. I should have walked out. But I didn't. Because the truth? I was starving. Not just for money, for meaning. For proof that I mattered. And if that meant letting them stitch a false history behind my name, maybe that was the price of survival. Okay, I said quietly. Let's talk terms. The next week was a blur. Vale and his team took over my story like it was a blank canvas. Suddenly, I wasn't just Eli Harper, I was E. Harper, a tortured outsider artist who'd vanished from the scene years ago after a personal tragedy no one could quite pin down. A genius recluse. A phoenix risen from Skid Row. I gave them fragments of truth. A broken childhood, a brother lost to addiction, a long battle with anxiety and eviction, and the kind of poverty no one wants to admit still exists in New York. They spun it into gold. And people bought it. Hard. Collectors lined up. One of them, a hedge fund guy with a Rolex made of literal meteorite, called Lazarus, a window into the soul of the forgotten. Another art critic wrote an op-ed comparing me to Basquiat with a better grasp of color theory. I started painting again. I stayed in a studio apartment Vale secured for me above a Chinese bakery that made the whole place smell like warm dough and burnt sesame. And for the first time in years, I had canvas. Brushes. Oil. Money. But also mirrors. Every time I looked in one, I didn't know who I was looking at. The version they built wasn't me, not really. And worse, I could feel something shifting under my feet. Like this whole new life was built on scaffolding made of lies. And eventually, it was gonna collapse. Then came the phone call that cracked the first beam. It was 1:17 a.m. I was half asleep, paint still drying on my jeans, when my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number. I answered anyway. A deep voice. Rough. Familiar in a way that made my blood turn cold. You're Eli Harper? The voice asked. Yeah. Who is this? You gave that painting to a man named Martin. Remember? My stomach dropped. Yeah. I whispered. He's dead. I sat bolt upright. What? How? There was a long pause. You should come see for yourself, the voice said. You owe him that much. Then the line went dead. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My hands were still stained with blue paint from a piece I'd been working on. Something wild and unhinged, like the inside of my head. But after that call, all I could see was Martin's face. The way he looked up at that mural like he was trying to remember something he used to be. Now he was gone. And I couldn't shake the feeling that my painting, my act of kindness, had somehow lit the fuse. I caught a subway at dawn, transferred twice, ended up in a part of the city I hadn't walked through in years. Concrete felt heavier here. Streets moved slower. Cops didn't look twice when a body washed up in the gutter. The man who called me was waiting near the entrance of a shelter that looked more like a holding cell. His name was Randall. Said he used to look out for Martin. Said they shared a cot, sometimes traded shoes when one of them couldn't walk. He got jumped, Randall said. Couple nights after someone offered him a wad of cash for your painting. My throat tightened. I thought he sold it. He did. But then he told me he wanted to get it back. Said it meant something. Said it was the first thing in years that didn't look at him like a mistake. I swallowed hard. The weight of that hit me right between the ribs. He was trying to find the woman who bought it. Thought maybe she didn't know what it was worth. He was gonna offer to trade her his coat. That ratty green thing he always wore? Said it was all he had. I felt like I was gonna throw up. My painting wasn't just a gift to him. It was hope, a future, maybe even a way out. And now he was dead. Cops didn't care, Randall added. Just another dead nobody. I figured maybe you would. He reached into a plastic grocery bag and pulled out a torn scrap of canvas, part of the original Lazarus. The edge, my signature was still there, ripped right down the middle. I stared at it, cold blooming in my chest. They tore it, I asked. They tore it in half before they took it, Randall said. Martin was trying to hold on. Guess he thought if he kept part of it, you'd come find him. I walked away before I cried in front of a stranger. I didn't go back to the studio that day. I just walked. For hours. All through the city like a ghost. Watching people live their lives while mine fell apart in slow motion. By the time I made it back, Julian Vale was waiting outside the gallery with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Big day, he said. Someone made an offer on your next piece. 7,000. We've got a buzz, Harper. I want out, I said. His smile twitched. Excuse me? I want out. No more lies. No more fake stories. I want my real name back. I want to tell people the truth. He studied me like I was a broken machine he didn't quite know how to fix. You don't understand how this works, he said. You don't get to change the story halfway through. The mystery is what sells. We made you relevant. No, I said, heat rising in my voice. I made me. You just put a spotlight on it. He took a step closer, voice lowering. You go public with this now, you're not just tanking your career. You're wasting every chance we've built. I've seen guys like you. You don't get second chances. Martin's dead, I said. He died trying to hold on to a piece of what I gave him. And I can't keep pretending this success was clean. For a second, Vale's expression shifted. Something cold behind his eyes. Martin, he repeated. You think you owe something to a bum who couldn't keep his grip on a lucky break? That's when I hit him. Not hard, but hard enough that he stumbled back, wide-eyed. I turned and walked out, and that should have been the end. But that's when the calls started. First, a gallery assistant, then a collector, then a reporter. Word was spreading fast. Harper was a fraud. Julian made good on his threat. He burned my name in public before I could reclaim it in private. By the end of the week, my studio was gone. The show canceled. My name blacklisted. But I still had my hands, still had paint, and still had the truth. So I did the only thing left that made sense. I started over. I was back where I started. No shows. No buyers. No praise from wine-drunk collectors who said things like, I feel a primal ache in the brushwork. My name was Ash. But the weirdest part? It felt clean. Burned, yeah, but clean. Like all the dirt and hype and slick PR that had clung to me was finally gone and I could breathe again. I crashed for a few days in Randall's shelter. Painted on whatever I could get my hands on: plywood, cardboard, old closet doors. It was messy, unfiltered, honest. I called the new collection Shadows Don't Fade. Every piece told a truth I hadn't been allowed to before, about Martin, about the lies Vale sold, about the way the world only values what it can exploit. And I didn't want a gallery. I didn't want a stage built by someone else. I wanted revenge. Not with violence. Not with threats. With art. So I did something bold. I staged an illegal exhibit. Not in some sterile white space, but in the gutted bones of an abandoned subway station beneath Canal Street. Graffiti still clung to the tile walls. Rats skittered through the shadows. It was perfect. I put out the word through burner social media accounts, cryptic invites, GPS pins, a blood-red poster that read, Harper is dead. But I am not. Come see the truth. It spread fast. Too fast. By the end of the week, the whole underground scene was buzzing. People came in waves, hipsters, students, street poets, even a few off-duty cops who didn't try too hard to shut it down. They walked through rusted tunnels lit by string lights and fire barrels. Every painting hung crooked, every wall bled color. There were no price tags. No titles. Just stories scrawled in charcoal on the backs of the frames. Stories like, he died holding half my painting and all my guilt. They sold my pain for profit. This piece is yours if you promise to never look away again. And then, at the far end of the tunnel, framed in cracked glass, was the torn half of Lazarus. The piece Martin saved. Next to it, I spray-painted in bold black letters. He didn't need to be saved. I did. People didn't just look. They felt. Some cried. Others sat down in silence and just stayed. Like the air was thicker down there. Like the truth made it harder to breathe, but easier to live. I didn't sell a single painting that night. I gave away 9. One to a girl who said it reminded her of the sister she hadn't spoken to in years. Another to a man who'd just been fired and was carrying his severance check like a death certificate. One to a nurse who hadn't painted since her mom died. They all walked away with my work. And with it, pieces of me. The next morning, I woke up to flashing headlines. Disgraced artist stages guerrilla exhibit in abandoned subway. Harper's work finds raw power off the grid. Truth hurts and we're all bleeding. Julian Vale called me that night. I let it ring 6 times before I picked up. You made your point, he said, voice like static. No, I replied. I made my art. There was a long silence. Then, you've got the city's attention now. You could monetize this. I smiled. Yeah, I said. But I won't. Then I hung up. But the world wasn't done with me. Because someone else had seen the show. Someone I hadn't expected. Someone who didn't just want to sell me. He wanted to help me create. And he had the kind of power money couldn't buy. He wanted to fund a new exhibit, no strings, no spin. Just truth. But there was one catch. He wanted to know everything. He introduced himself as Dominic Castle. First time I heard the name, I had no idea who he was. But a quick search at the library told me everything I needed to know. Former Wall Street shark turned art world enigma. He'd bought entire collections with pocket change. Destroyed careers with a raised eyebrow. The kind of man who didn't show up, he summoned you. And yet, there he was, standing in the middle of the Canal Street station the day after my exhibit, dressed like he belonged in a noir film. Charcoal coat, silver cane, half a smirk like he'd already read the ending of my story and just wanted to watch me stumble toward it. I wasn't invited, he said, stepping over a paint-splattered plank. No one was, I replied. They came anyway. He smiled. That's the mark of something real. People don't follow hype, they follow hunger. I wasn't sure whether he was complimenting me or dissecting me. He walked slowly, studying the walls, the work, the half-burned messages, the rawness. When he got to the torn Lazarus piece, he stopped. This, he said, isn't art. This is confession. Same thing most days. He turned to me, eyes colder than I expected. You could have sold out 100 times over by now. Why haven't you? I didn't answer. Because the truth was, I almost had. And part of me still wanted to. Just not like that. He nodded like he heard my silence. Then he handed me a card. Nothing on it but a phone number and the letters DC. I want to offer you space, he said. A gallery. Not a show. Place. Yours. You make whatever you want, whenever you want. We curate your way. No lies. No veil. Just the work. I'll fund it. Quietly. Why? I asked. What's in it for you? He hesitated. And for the first time, I saw something crack in that polished mask. My son, he said quietly. He died last year. OD. Heroin. He was an artist, too. No one ever saw his work. No one ever will. I found it after he passed. Taped to his walls, scribbled on cardboard and pizza boxes. He looked at me then, dead in the eyes. You remind me of him, except you're still breathing. The silence between us felt like a third person in the room. I couldn't save him, Castle continued. But maybe I can save something that still has a pulse. He turned to leave, but stopped at the stairwell. "Call me when you're ready," he said. "I won't ask twice." And just like that, he was gone. I stared at that card for a long time. Part of me didn't trust him. Hell, I barely trusted myself anymore. But another part, buried under all the pain and betrayal and loss, felt like maybe this was the thing. The thread I was supposed to follow. Not for fame. Not even for survival. For meaning. So I called. The space was tucked inside an old meatpacking warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Stone floors. Steel beams. A vault in the back that Castle said used to hold whole cows. Now converted into a studio with lighting so perfect it felt like it was built for gods. And it was mine. No catch. No branding. Just keys and silence. "Make something that hurts," he said. "Make something that heals. Just make it." So I did. The first piece I created there was called Re-Entry. A full-scale self-portrait, but not of my face. Just my hands. Covered in paint, ink, dirt, and blood. Reaching. Always reaching. I painted through the nights. Slept on the floor. Ate whatever Castle's assistant left by the door. I wasn't living, I was resurrecting. Weeks passed. Word spread. And then, on opening night of the new exhibit, people came. Not the elite. Not the buyers. The ones who'd been ignored. The ones like Martin. The ones like me. Randall showed up, wearing a clean coat and a smile I'd never seen on him before. Some of the people who took my giveaway paintings showed up too, holding them like relics. And there, among them all, stood Emily. Yeah, her. The girl from the bookstore. From a life that felt like someone else's story. She stepped closer and whispered, "You made it." "No," I said, smiling. "I'm still making it." She slipped something into my hand. A folded piece of paper. I opened it later, after the crowd had thinned and the lights had dimmed. It was a sketch I'd done years ago. One I thought I'd lost. A charcoal scribble of a bookstore couch and a girl with her hair tied up in a pencil. And underneath, in her handwriting, "You gave me hope. I kept it safe. Now give it to someone else." I didn't expect the last piece to come to me in a dream. But it did. I saw it before I ever touched a brush. A room. Empty, cracked walls, flickering light. And in the center, a massive canvas nearly swallowing the space. No frame. No edges. Just white. And then, a single streak of red, running down the center like a wound. That was it. But I woke up with my heart pounding like I'd seen something sacred. That morning, I walked into the vault studio, pulled down every canvas, cleared every wall. I bought a roll of primed linen the length of a truck and nailed it straight to the beams. It took up the whole back of the room. Taller than me, wider than anything I'd ever dared. I stared at it for hours. Didn't paint. Didn't sketch. Just listened. Then I opened the folded sketch Emily had given me again. The bookstore. That moment. The beginning of the beginning. And I started. The final piece was called Martin. But it wasn't just about him. It was about every forgotten soul I'd passed by. Every person who tried and failed and tried again. It was about the man I was before the painting, and the one I became after. It was about second chances that don't come with headlines. About worth without wealth. About what it means to be seen. I painted for 12 days without pause. Ate barely enough. Slept in short fits. I painted until the walls blurred and my hands blistered. Until I couldn't remember where the canvas ended and I began. I used every color I had, new shades, old techniques, pigments mixed with dust from the subway exhibit floor. I even used ash from a burned letter Vale once sent me, mixed into the darker tones. I wanted it all there, every version of me, every step of the firewalk. And when I finished, I collapsed right there on the paint-stained floor, staring up at the ceiling like it might give me permission to stop. Opening night, Castle didn't call the press, didn't invite buyers. He invited survivors, a shelter worker, a teenage poet who lived in her car, a man who'd traded his last sandwich for a paintbrush, people who had stories written in scars and silence, people who didn't need an introduction to pain, they brought it with them. When they walked into the vault and saw the painting, they didn't clap. No gasps, no fake praise, just silence, heavy, reverent. Some cried. Others sat on the floor and stared for hours. A few touched the edge of the canvas like it was an altar. And one woman whispered, "It looks like freedom." That's when I knew. I didn't need validation. I didn't need galleries. I didn't even need to be remembered. I just needed to leave something behind that said, I was here. I mattered. Months passed. The exhibit stayed open. Castle kept his word. He didn't commercialize it. No price tags. No sales. Just visits. Donations went to local shelters and art therapy programs. Martin became a space people entered, not just a piece they saw. And me? I kept painting. Kept walking the line between broken and whole, between old ghosts and new light. Sometimes Emily came by, always quiet, always holding a coffee and a book she never quite opened. We never tried to go back to what we were. We just became what we could. One night she said, "You ever think maybe the people who fall the furthest just have more story to climb back up?" I smiled. Yeah, and I'm still climbing. The last time I saw Vale, he was on TV, interviewing some new artist, selling their gritty authenticity with the same slick smile he once gave me. I didn't feel anger, just pity. He was still playing with shadows. I'd moved on to light. And Martin? His name's carved into the studio door now. Not flashy, just etched there, permanent and simple. People ask who he was. And I tell them, he was the reason I remembered who I am. Final brushstroke. If you ever see my name on a painting, know this. It came from a place that almost stopped beating. And if you're holding something of mine, it's yours now. Keep it. Live with it. Let it remind you that even when the world forgets your name, you are still art. You are still worth framing. You are still not done.